I woke to the soft hum of the city outside my apartment window, the lights casting a lazy glow across my polished hardwood floors. My silk blouse clung comfortably to my skin, and for a moment, I savored the quiet, my favorite part of the night. Everything about my life looked neat, precise, and put together, at least from the outside. From my corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows to the carefully curated art on the walls, I was the picture of calm success. And yet, there was a part of me that always felt unremarkable, at least in my family's eyes. My nephews used to laugh at my boring life, teasing me about my early nights, my organized spreadsheets, and my love for quiet dinners over loud parties. I had learned long ago not to argue. It wasn't worth it. Then my phone buzzed sharply on the nightstand, breaking the stillness. The time flashed 3:07 a.m., and I felt a pang of irritation before noticing the caller ID. It was them, Ethan and Luke, my youngest nephews. My pulse quickened with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Who calls at this hour unless it's urgent, or worse, disastrous? I rolled over, grabbing the phone, my fingers brushing the cool metal. "Hello," I whispered, my voice steady, hiding the flicker of excitement that threatened to betray me. I remember sitting cross-legged on the faded carpet of my childhood bedroom, the evening sunlight slanting through half-closed blinds. My laptop was open, my latest project sprawled across the screen, but my brother's laughter echoed from the living room. "Ha, look at Aunt Claire, so boring. She's probably reading some spreadsheet right now," Ethan had snickered, nudging Luke. Their words stung more than I wanted to admit. I had always been the quiet one, the one who planned, who worked diligently while everyone else sought thrill. And apparently, that made me laughable. I felt my hands trembling as I closed the laptop, the hum of the fan above mixing with the sting in my chest. It wasn't just their teasing, it was the implication that my choices, my discipline, were meaningless. I swallowed hard, trying to hold back tears, but the lump in my throat refused to budge. Then I heard her voice, soft but firm, coming from the doorway. "Claire, don't let them define you," Grandma said, holding out a small, worn journal. "Use this. Write your dreams, your plans. Someday, they'll see the strength they can't measure in laughter." Her hands were wrinkled, yet steady as she placed the leather-bound gift in my palms. I could feel the weight of her belief, a warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold sting of ridicule. That night, I stayed awake until the stars had faded, scribbling furiously in that journal. Each word was a promise to myself. I would prove that my boring life wasn't small. I would build something of my own, something no one could mock or diminish. By the time the morning sun touched the edges of my window, I had made my decision. I would leave the confines of their judgment behind. I would carve a path that was mine entirely, armed with nothing but determination, discipline, and the quiet encouragement of a woman who believed I could. That journal wasn't just paper. It was a map, a lifeline, and the beginning of a journey they would never expect. I still remember the first day I walked into my tiny, rented office, the smell of fresh paint mingling with the faint aroma of coffee from the corner cafe below. The city was waking up, traffic humming like a persistent drumbeat, and I felt a thrill that had nothing to do with excitement and everything to do with possibility. I had no money saved, no influential contacts, only that worn journal from Grandma filled with plans, lists, and whispered promises to myself. Then I met Rachel. She was a seasoned marketing consultant, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, who somehow saw potential in a nervous, 20-something me. "Claire," she had said, leaning against the edge of my bare desk, "I don't know if you're ready, but I know you can do it. I'll help you, but only if you're willing to work harder than everyone else." Her words ignited something inside me, a mix of hope and challenge. The first few months were brutal. I remember sitting at that same desk long after the office lights had dimmed, sipping bitter instant coffee, trying to memorize client briefs while my fingers cramped from typing endless proposals. I doubted myself constantly. I wondered if my boring, methodical approach would ever be enough in a world that rewarded flash and noise. I faced rejection, harsh criticism, and the gnawing fear that I was destined to be invisible. But slowly, the wins came. My first big client signed on after weeks of careful negotiation. I remember the surge of pride as I closed that deal, whispering to myself, "This is just the beginning." Then came the small victories. My first profitable campaign, a feature in a local magazine, the steady hum of recognition that no one in my family would ever see on Facebook or Instagram. I deliberately kept my success quiet, sending only vague updates that masked the real scope of my achievements. Let them laugh at my boring life. I was quietly building something remarkable. Every evening, I returned to that journal, updating it with milestones and reflections. It was my compass, my silent cheerleader. I learned to trust my instincts, to celebrate the small wins, and to let go of the fear of judgment. Slowly, the girl who had trembled at her nephew's teasing became a woman capable of commanding rooms, negotiating deals, and quietly owning her future. By the end of that first year, I had transformed the office into a space that reflected me: sleek furniture, a few pieces of art I loved, shelves lined with books that reminded me why I worked so hard. And all the while, the teasing voices from my past were nothing more than a distant echo. I knew the real surprise, both for them and for me, was yet to come. It was late Saturday afternoon when they finally arrived. Ethan and Luke, my two mischievous nephews, flanked by their mother. They expected the quiet, boring Claire they'd always teased. I had made sure to tell them my weekend was free and simple, leaving no hint of what awaited. The door opened to my apartment, and the first thing they noticed was the subtle transformation. The space wasn't just tidy, it was curated, a reflection of years of quiet triumph. Expensive art hung on the walls, carefully chosen photographs documented travels and milestones, and the scent of fresh peonies filled the room. The sunlight spilling through the windows caught the sleek edges of the furniture, gleaming like a subtle nod to success. I greeted them warmly, though my pulse thrummed with anticipation. "Hi, guys. Come in," I said, motioning toward the living area. They hesitated, taking it all in. Their eyes widened, scanning the space, whispering to each other. Ethan was the first to break the silence. Claire, this is nice," he stammered, voice unsure. I smiled, letting the moment stretch. "Nice," I repeated softly, walking past them toward my desk. My laptop rested open, spreadsheets running across the screen, contracts and client portfolios stacked neatly. "Let me show you something." I opened a folder labeled Business Ventures and pulled up financial statements, ownership documents, and photos of client events I'd organized. Their jaws dropped. Luke's hand flew to his mouth. "Wait, this is all yours?" he asked, disbelief written across his face. "Yes," I said, steady, calm, savoring their stunned expressions. "Every campaign, every project, every client you've never heard of, it's mine. I run a successful consulting firm. I've been quietly building it for years." Ethan's laughter, nervous at first, faded into silence. "But we always thought you were, boring," he admitted, his voice small. "That's the thing about being boring," I replied, leaning against my desk with a quiet authority. "It's often misunderstood. The world doesn't need flashy chaos. It needs discipline, persistence, and vision. Something you teased me for, but something that allowed me to reach this point while the rest of the world slept." Their mother looked at me, eyes wide, guilt and amazement mingling. "Claire, I had no idea," she whispered. I walked them around the apartment, showing them evidence of years of hard work, signed contracts, client thank you letters, and framed recognitions. "I didn't build this to impress you," I said gently. "I built it for me. But now, you get to see it for yourselves." They were speechless, their previous mockery evaporated, replaced with awe and a hint of shame. I watched them process, the power dynamic shifting effortlessly. The boring girl they had ridiculed for loving spreadsheets, quiet nights, and meticulous planning had grown into a woman who owned not only her life, but also their stunned respect. By the end of the tour, the room was heavy with unspoken realization. I had let them in, not just into my apartment, but into the truth of who I had become. And in that moment, I understood. The teasing, the ridicule, the 3 a.m. laughter from the past, They had all been part of a story that ended exactly how I wanted it to. After the initial shock wore off, I finally let myself relax, leaning back against the sleek leather chair behind my desk. The atmosphere had shifted completely. They had come expecting the same old Claire, quiet, unnoticed, and boring. Instead, they were staring at a woman who had quietly built a life they couldn't even imagine. The balance of power had shifted, and I intended to make sure it stayed that way, while still offering a hand under my terms. "I'm willing to help," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But it comes with conditions. You can't just step into my world without understanding what it takes to grow, to be accountable." Their eyes widened. They hadn't expected boundaries, but I had learned that generosity without structure was wasted energy. "First," I continued, turning to Ethan, "you need to stop dismissing hard work as boring. You have potential, but only if you respect the effort it takes to succeed. No more mocking anyone for their choices, ever. If you want to be taken seriously, you must learn to take others seriously." He nodded slowly, shame mixed with understanding in his gaze. Then I looked at Luke. "You've been impulsive, reckless, and dramatic. That energy can be powerful if channeled correctly, but you need focus. I want you to pick a project, a skill, anything, and commit to it fully. I don't want excuses. Half-hearted attempts don't lead anywhere." Their mother looked stricken, and I softened my tone slightly. "And for you?" I said gently. "I know it hasn't been easy managing all of them. But you also have to learn to trust that not all success is loud. Sometimes it's quiet, persistent, and invisible until the results speak. Allow yourself to recognize effort and growth, not just spectacle." I handed each of them a copy of my journal, the one Grandma had given me years ago. "This helped me. Write in it. Set goals.
Plan.
Track progress. Don't let life slip by unnoticed while waiting for someone else to validate you. Success is personal, and it starts with discipline and self-belief." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Ethan muttered, "Claire, we never realized." His voice trailed off, filled with regret. Luke nodded, flipping through the pages. "We didn't get it, not until now." I smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction settle in my chest. "You still have work to do," I said. "I'm not giving you a shortcut, but I am offering guidance. Change is a choice, and I'll support it, but only if you take responsibility for your own growth." In that moment, I felt the weight of years lift slightly. The teasing, the 3 a.m. calls, the judgment, it had all led to this, a chance to guide the next generation while asserting my hard-earned authority. For the first time, I wasn't just successful. I was a leader, a mentor, and a woman who had turned ridicule into opportunity. They might have mocked my boring life, but now they were standing in the shadow of a woman who had quietly mastered her own world. Weeks later, I watched subtle changes unfold. Ethan no longer mocked quiet ambition. He stayed late at his own internship, asking questions, taking notes, showing focus I hadn't seen before. Luke approached projects with diligence instead of chaos, his impulsive energy now channeled into meaningful work. Their mother called me occasionally, asking for advice, and this time, I felt the warmth of genuine respect in her voice rather than judgment. Sitting in my apartment one evening, I opened the worn journal from Grandma again. The pages were full now, milestones, lessons learned, reflections on challenges, and small victories. I ran my fingers across the familiar leather cover, feeling the weight of years of growth. That little book had guided me when my family mocked me, had reminded me that discipline and persistence were more powerful than ridicule, and that even a boring life could hold extraordinary triumphs. I reflected on the journey, the sting of their teasing, the long nights of uncertainty, the self-doubt that threatened to paralyze me. I remembered every moment I had chosen to stay committed to myself, every risk I had taken when no one believed I could succeed. And I realized that the most important victories weren't financial. They were emotional, the mastery of self, and the courage to define my own worth. For the first time in years, I felt complete. My nephews had begun to see, truly see, the value of effort, and in that process, I saw the reflection of my own growth mirrored in them. The teasing that had once stung now felt like a distant echo, a reminder of how far I had come. I closed the journal, placing it carefully on my desk. Standing by the window, watching the city lights twinkle like scattered stars, I whispered to myself, I am more than what they mocked. I am strength, independence, and grace, all at once. And in that quiet moment, I understood fully that the boring life they laughed at had been the canvas on which I had painted my masterpiece, a life of purpose, achievement, and self-respect. Their 3 a.m. emergency call may have jolted me awake, but it also reminded me that every challenge, every slight, had led to a triumph far more exciting than any of us could have imagined. Bottom of form.